Well, good afternoon or morning, storytellers and writers. Today we're going to talk about using your voice in writing. And sometimes when you read stories from authors and the same author, you hear what their voice is like. You know right away when you're reading a book who that book came from, right? So today we're going to talk about how sometimes authors can write in a different way. So they can write to sound like a news reporter, or they can write to sound like a storyteller. And today we want to talk about looking at our writing and try to tell it from a storyteller's voice. So I wanted to make sure that you knew that you've been doing an awesome job writing. You guys should have little mini celebrations because you're doing so good. So we just want to make it even better. So today, I have my notes right here. I wanted to read you two passages today, and you're going to get with your partner after. And I want you and your partner to discuss which one you thought was telling it like a news reporter, and then which one was telling it like a storyteller. So remember, we want to tell our stories, our narrative stories that we're creating, like a storyteller. It's not a bad thing to tell it like a news reporter, but that's just a different type of story, right? So I'm going to read two things for you, and then I want you to decide which one you think sounds like a storyteller voice. So this is A, we're going to call it. Yesterday we couldn't go outside, so we stayed inside and listened to a read aloud instead. But we didn't hear much, and we were distracted with dragonflies flying around the room. We continued to listen to the read aloud. Okay, so that was A. Now I want you to listen to B. Listen up, our teacher said as she opened Because of Winn-Dixie and began to read. We were so quiet we could probably have heard ants crawling along the floor. Then our teacher lowered the book. We were about to say, "No, read it," but she was looking at a blur of wings that flew between us. "What was that?" Sam called. "Dragonflies!" And soon enough, we saw them. Now, 3 dragonflies hovered over our heads. So now, I want you to turn to your partner, and I want you to tell me, story A, was that told like a storyteller's voice or a news reporter voice? Story B, I want you to tell me if that was a news reporter voice or a storyteller voice. Okay, you can pause the video right now. All right, so today, remember, we wanted to talk about telling our stories like a storyteller. So hopefully you and your partner chose story B because that was a storyteller voice. And there were so many details in it that made it better, right? You could imagine what was going on in that story. So I wanted to come right here to talk to you about showing, not telling. So in the first news reporter, they were just showing what was happening. In the second story, I was actually, or reverse that. In the newspaper reporter, they're just telling you the details about what's happening. In a story telling you, they're having you imagine that story in your head, right? Like you could probably sit and draw a picture about what was going on in that classroom. So we want to make sure that our stories are very focused, right? We're not telling this huge long out story, we're talking about the seed story. But it doesn't have to be small because we can give all of those really good details that go with the story that kind of tells it bit by bit. So when we talk about using all of those pieces, so if you remember in the news reporter voice, it said, "We were distracted by the dragonflies." In the storyteller voice, it says how the teacher looked at a blur of wings flying around the room between us. Do you see how that's a little bit different? There's just more details added so that you can picture that better in your head, and it uses juicier words. So that's what I want you to try today, is to add in those little details, small details, bit by bit, describing what you see, maybe what you smelled, maybe what you tasted, or what it felt like. So we want to make sure what we saw in our real personal narrative is also what our reader is going to see. So let's review just really quick before you get started. If we're going to write a true story, we have already talked about finding those ideas that are focused, remember that seed story, and important to you, and you are writing lots of entries. So today we're adding in to make a mental movie of what happened, telling that small details bit by bit. And if you see right here, we're talking about the actions, the settings, the actions again, dialogue, everything that goes on in your story. All right, good luck. You can do it.